What is going on there, everyone? Well, we got some interesting developments. I'm sure a lot of you have heard by now, and maybe you haven't. But Trump scores two huge victories on the border. Let's get into this article from the Wall Street Journal. Supreme Court rules Trump can use Pentagon funds for border wall. Guatemala agrees to require migrants traveling through it to the U.S. to seek asylum there. This is big. This is a big win, and it's not over by far. I will state that I know it's not over, but this is still a really big win. Let's get into the story. President Trump won two victories on his border agenda Friday, with Supreme Court allowing the use of military funds to expand the barrier on the Mexican border, while Guatemala agreed to serve as gatekeeper for asylum seekers trying to get to the U.S. Finally, I mean that's kind of how it's set up in a way. Is there's some, if you're coming from somewhere that's more than a country away, you're supposed to seek asylum in the next safe country, which I don't even know why they consider Mexico unsafe. It's got unsafe areas. Sure, it does. America's got unsafe areas. There's a lot of unsafe areas everywhere. But back to the story. In a 5-4 decision, which we've been seeing those all the time, the justices of the U.S. High Court said President Trump can shift about $2.5 billion in military funds to construct an additional 100 miles of wall at the U.S.-Mexico border, in an effort to seal off the U.S. from illegal immigration. And drugs. They didn't put that in there because that was also a main push. Was the border needs to be set up in certain areas because of drugs. The left keeps arguing that most of the drugs seized come in through the ports of entry. Of course, because that's where we have people. That's where the drugs will get seized because we have people there. We're talking about expanses in the desert area where there are no people and the terrain's relatively easy to cross. That's where the border wall is needed because we don't have people there. Therefore, we need something to stop. I mean, they can't actually say that most of the drugs come in through points or the point of entry, border entries. They can't say that because they don't have stats for how much is coming through non-protected areas. Because they just don't know. The people do it. They come in all the time. They're bringing drugs in all the time over the areas where there's no protection, and they don't get caught. So they can't say that for sure that most of the drugs come in through the border entries. No, they don't. That's a guaranteed. Sure, a lot do come in through there. Absolutely. And that's a problem too. At least they're getting caught there. You see what I'm saying? You see what I mean? Where are they getting their information that most of the drugs come in through the ports of entry? It's just not true. They can't say that for certain. Back to the story. In February, Mr. Trump had declared a national emergency in order to divert a total of $6.7 billion from military and other sources without the approval of Congress, which had signaled willingness to give him far less. Lower courts had barred the transfer of some of the funds desired by the president, but the Supreme Court on Friday ordered those lower courts' rulings to be suspended. Wow, big victory on the wall, Mr. Trump wrote on Twitter. The United States Supreme Court overturns lower court injunction, allows southern border wall to proceed. Big win for border security and rule of law. Separately, under pressure from the Trump administration, Guatemala agreed to require migrants traveling through it to the U.S. to seek asylum there instead of at the U.S.-Mexico border. Mr. Trump joined Guatemala's Interior Minister Enrique Dagenhart and Acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan in the Oval Office to sign what White House officials said was a safe third country agreement. They can make a protection claim if they would like, in Guatemala, Mr. Akolinin said. So if they arrive in the U.S. not having availed themselves of that opportunity, they will be returned to Guatemala. Beautiful. Finally, who knows how long this will last, because I'm sure there's going to be 1,000 billion leftist challengers to it. But at least it's set up to where they can start doing something. The two developments represent hard-fought victories for the Trump administration in its effort to address a flood of refugees. I don't like them using the word refugees. They're not really refugees. They're economic migrants. I mean, that would be the proper term for them, because 99% of these people are just coming here for a piece of the pie. They're not coming here because they're in fear. I mean, come on. Along the U.S. border with Mexico, which the Republican president described on Friday as the crippling crisis on our border. Mr. Akolinin said he expected the agreement with Guatemala to take effect sometime in August. The move comes shortly after a federal judge in California dealt a blow to the Trump administration rule that would have barred most asylum claims from migrants who had passed through any other country after leaving their home nations. U.S. Judge John S. Tigger ordered the administration to halt the rule, which had been in effect since mid-May. Of course, leave it to California, a place that can't even take care of its own citizens, while giving health care to illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. Yeah, come on. California is, for the lack of a better term, it's a shit show. It's ridiculous. I feel really bad for the people that live in California, because it is a beautiful place. As long as you stay out of the cities where there's feces and needles everywhere, it's a beautiful place. But yeah, don't get me started on California. Like I said, no offense to Californians. I understand. Y'all aren't the government there. But y'all do vote these people in that are destroying your state. I don't understand. I don't understand. Yeah, as you can see, we're doing Trump supporters. This is a big win. This is a really big win. It looks good optically and everything. It's what the people have been wanting. And you know what else it goes down to is, this is the first president who made all kinds of promises during his campaign, and he's actually delivering on those promises. He's actually doing it. He's been one of the first presidents in my lifetime to actually try to stick to his word about what he talked about on his campaign. So I give mad props to Trump and to his administration for keeping these fights going, you know. But yeah, this is a really long article. I'm not going to get into all of it. Not at all. I mean, it's way too long. But I'm going to skip around. And I'll put a link in the description for if you want to read the whole thing. It'll be there for you. We'll start back here. Earlier this month, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco upheld a lower court ruling that blocked the administration's plan. Friday's order allows the government to move ahead while it appeals the Ninth Circuit's decision. Chief Justice John Roberts, joined by Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Mr. Trump's two appointees, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, voted to let the plan proceed. Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, and Sonia Sotomayor and Ellen Keegan dissented. We are all pleased that the Supreme Court recognized the lower courts should not have halted construction of the walls on the southern border, said Justice Department spokesman Alexei. Whoa. That name is like an eye chart to me. Alexei Woltornist. We will continue to vigorously defend the administration's efforts to protect our nation. The challengers vowed to press on. The decision will wall off and destroy communities, public lands, and waters in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. No, it won't. No, it won't. They're not. I don't even think they're allowed. They have to actually go out, survey everything. There's a big process. They act like they're just gonna put walls up through animals and stuff. Come on, they're not doing that. Ay ay ay. But yeah, New Mexico and Arizona said Gloria Smith, managing attorney with the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club will continue to fight this wall and Trump's agenda through and through. Of course. So what they're really doing is just fighting 60-something million people is what they're doing. They're saying, we don't care about the will of the people. We just want what we want, which is a typical leftist position. Justice Breyer, who alone among the dissenters would have allowed the administration to take preliminary steps short of actually beginning physical construction, wrote a brief opinion offering a glimpse into the court's deliberation. In it, Justice Breyer suggested that a principal question was whether the groups that challenged the administration's plan to reallocate funds have a legal standing to file a lawsuit. They might not. Probably will. It seems like the government allows people to sue the government for any and everything they do. This case raises novel and important questions about the ability of private parties to enforce Congress's appropriations power, he wrote. The Sierra Club and the Southern Border Communities Coalition sued to block the reallocation in February, alleging that the wall project would inflict environmental harms and reduce the quality of life along the border. No, it won't do that. It won't do that. Just, geez, they always try to make it just fit their narrative, and try to make it seem like, oh, we're trying to block border security for the earth. And say, oh, shut up. Come on, have you ever seen the Great Wall in China? Yeah, animals seem to somehow navigate around it perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. And that wall is a lot bigger than the one we want to do. I mean, really, it said in this article that there is about 100 miles of wall can be built. It's not actually true. Really, it's more like 250 miles of wall, which still is, you're looking at the southern border, it's over, 2,000 miles long? So it's a drop in the bucket, but they can put 250 miles of that border wall in some of the areas in which they know drug trafficking and human trafficking is happening, you know? So it's not a cure to the problem, but it is a fat Band-Aid that's going to help a little bit. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Skip down here. About 654 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border is currently has some kind of physical barrier, and much of the rest of the border has natural barriers. Congress did allocate around $1.3 billion for 55 miles of wall. Mr. Trump deemed that insufficient for what he has described as a crisis of illegal immigration that requires a wall. All these articles seem to skip the drug thing too, because that was also one of Trump's biggest arguments for the wall, is that it's not only immigration, it's human trafficking, which under the Trump administration, human trafficking is being pursued hard. Like, they are trying to find these people. I mean, look at the Jeffrey Epstein case and all this stuff like that. Trump does not like. He does not like when people do stuff like that at all, and he is gonna make them pay. But yeah, it's looking good. The Trump administration has sought to replace some barriers with tougher materials and to erect some new barriers where there were previously no wall, but hasn't specified where all of the funded construction is to take place. I don't care where it takes place. I'm just happy something's being done. All this obstruction we've seen when it comes to border security from the left has been insane. It's been absolutely just bonky. I don't understand. I don't understand where they get a fight against funding for either a border wall, because historically the Democrats have always been for border security and tough border security. Obama was known as the deporter in chief. I mean, there you can watch all this film of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these top Democrats when Obama was in office talking about how important it is for border security and border barriers and this, that, and the other, and a secure border. But as soon as Trump becomes president, and because that was one of his messages that we needed to fix the border, they're completely against it. They need to stop playing politics with all of our lives, because that's what they're doing. That's what the left is doing. They're playing politics with stuff that'll affect us, the people. It's not just a danger issue. It's not just a drug issue. You know, there's many issues which make just unfettered immigration completely unfeasible. You know, economically, it's bad. It's really bad on this country, considering most of the immigrants that come from South America end up on a welfare program. Not all, but a good portion. It's like 60-something percent, 63, 64% end up on welfare. And even the illegals somehow get on welfare. I don't understand how that happens, but it does. And this is a provable fact. I don't understand where the shift happened in the Democratic Party to where border security is not important anymore. I mean, look at the candidates running for president. They want to give health care to illegal aliens. Well, that'll destroy the healthcare system. There will be, I mean, someone's got to pay for that crap. And as a taxpayer, I don't want to be responsible for people that shouldn't even be here in the first place. That's ridiculous. It's hard enough for me to pay for my own stuff, let alone have to pay for everybody else. You know, I don't mind, in a way, paying for Americans' welfare, but I think there needs to be more stipulations to being able to get welfare. I think you should at least have to have a part-time job, you know. And in a lot of places, you do have to have a part-time job. I think that's kind of, it's law here, I believe, in Virginia, that you at least have to have a part-time job in order to get welfare. But yeah, that should be a nationwide thing if it's not. And it may be. It just may be, like everything else, screwed with, and, you know, people just sweeping stuff under the rug. But I'm getting in too much of a rant, and I usually don't make videos on the weekends. But this was big, and it happened yesterday evening, and I just thought I'd bring it up, talk about it a little bit. I'd love to hear y'all's point of views on this. And, yeah. As always, like, share, and subscribe. I will catch you on the flip side.